We left off discussion with rules for Chapter 19 Charter Schools Notice.
So, members of the board, President Robbins, thank you for the latitude that you've allowed the department staff to meet with Dr. Knight to sort of address her concerns in a way that are specific to her, but also honor the fact that not every charter school authorizer is going to have the background and the credibility and the knowledge that Dr. Knight had. So it's trying to get the balance right of having a skilled and dedicated operator versus having a rule that would apply to anybody who might open a charter school. So the proposal that the department adheres to is the proposal as noticed in your materials, that the rules both on an emergency basis and on a notice of intended action basis be adopted as presented. The department has some latitude and some funding at its disposal to attempt to address Dr. Knight's concerns on a one-year basis, on a startup basis, and in a conversation with Dr. Knight that alleviates some, if not all, of her concerns. If she continues or others continue to have concerns, there is the rulemaking process as part of this, the public comment period as part of this rulemaking. So the department adheres to its recommendation to notice and adopt these rules as they're written, with the understanding that because Dr. Knight's going first, and this is a notable and needed service, the department is going to exercise some latitude to provide some financial support through some department discretionary funds. Dr. Lebo, did I steal your thunder?
Yes. So yes, that is what we met about and agreed upon. So we feel very good about the proposed solution.
And one of the hallmarks of juvenile court is nothing about me without me. So I'd just like to exercise the prerogative as rules coordinator to ask Dr. Knight if she would care to add or supplement that. Do you understand, is our understanding the same as about what is going to happen going forward?
Yes.
So the recommendation that was in the board information was to amend Chapter 19 on an emergency basis as you presented, and further recommend that the state board give notice of its intent to amend Chapter 19.
I would move that as a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Chapter 56, Iowa Vocational Rehabilitation Services.
56 was done under consent agenda. We are on chapters
77
and 79.
Practitioner Preparation Standards.
You gave me a moment there.
We're jumping ahead.
This is along the lines of cleanup. The administrative code needs to be amended to reflect recent legislation that eliminated the exit performance test for a teacher candidate completes a program. So Praxis or EdTPA, whatever I think those were the two common ones. This strikes the requirement, the rules strike that requirement, as well as the entrance requirement. If a practitioner prep program implements an entrance requirement, the requirement that they report those data to the department. So this aligns with legislative intent. As long as the chapters are being opened, there's some cleanup of a non-substantive nature. But the recommendation is to give notice of intended action to amend Chapter 77 and 79 to strike the program completion test requirement. This legislation was effective upon enactment Dr. Radzaba, who actually knows what she's talking about. She did an almost immediate real-time communication with practitioner prep programs about their former graduates who were unsuccessful on praxis, and many of those folks are joining the teaching profession this year. So if you have any questions for either of us, the recommendation is to give notice of intended action to amend chapters 77 and 79.
So school could still require this. An individual college could say, to get into our program, you have to take this praxis and pass it at this level.
Yes.
You can still do that, but can't require that as a means of getting getting a job.
So ultimately, the practitioner prep program makes a recommendation. Should the candidate have a license or a credential, yes or no? Practitioner prep program could include praxis or EdTPA as part of that recommendation process. They would no longer be required to.
Okay. Thank you.
So the way I would look at it is that the testing is a program completion requirement in Iowa.
Right.
And therefore, the programs have the authority to keep that a
They
requirement.
could keep it as a partners. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Clark University.
That would be me. Thanks for your time today. I think you will see me and my colleague, Dr. Prega, here today, presenting the next few programs to you. Clark is, the application for Clark is to offer a program that is already approved in a fully online format. It is required by Chapter 79 that any significant changes to delivery has to be approved by the state board. And therefore, that's why the program is here in front of you. There are some small, summary of what are some of the highlights of the program that is in the packet that you have, but I can just talk about we require that any program making any changes to program would write an application which they address all the standards from governance and resources, diversity, faculty, assessment, and then clinical and knowledge, skills, and dispositions. And that's what Clark did. They wrote an application, they provided evidence that they are able to meet those standards. In the organization and resources, we specifically checked several things, like we asked about how is this going to influence their faculty load? How is this going to influence the access of the student to the resources that they would normally have access to in the library or in a face-to-face format? And they were able to provide evidence that they have resources available for online format for students who are taking the same program in an online format. In the diversity, we look at two main standards in diversity. One is how well they prepare the candidates to teach the diverse students that they have in their classroom, and also how they welcome the diverse candidates in their school as Clark University. They don't foresee that the change would necessarily change the diverse population that they have as candidates in the program. However, it does make the program, because this is designed for those who have certain number of credits coming to the program, and for those who are having a fully online, full-time job, to be able to do the coursework online while they are doing their work in the school as a paraeducator or other roles that they can serve and earn those clinical requirements. So they were able to show that so the program is not making any changes to diversity as they can imagine, but it does make the program more accessible to certain group of candidates. The faculty qualifications won't make any changes to the faculty qualification. The programs have those qualifications lined up and they will follow the same qualification as far as the K-12 experience and higher education experience that the faculty members need to have in this program. The assessment also doesn't change dramatically. They will add additional assessment pieces to asking for some more feedback from the cooperating teachers and things that would influence improving the program as they move on. But they will continue to have their assessment system in place as they have for their approved unit. And with clinical, this is also another area that when we look at an online program, we look at clinical very carefully because we want to make sure that the candidates have equal opportunity or equivalent opportunity to have those clinical experiences, including the field experiences and student teaching. And what the evidence they provided, they will be able to monitor that, they will be able to manage that and track that so that when we go for the next review, they will be able to show that they're in compliance with that. Their knowledge, skills, and disposition, there was no changes to their curriculum, and their curriculum is approved by Board of Educational Examiners. It is recommended that the state board award the full approval to Clark University to offer accelerated online elementary education program, including K-6 and K-8 endorsement until next review of the unit, which is scheduled for 2025-2026. And we have Dr. Ellen Spencer and Kathy Stiermeyer, and who can answer questions about the program. And I would be happy to answer any question about the process.
Are there any questions?
Talk to me a little bit about oversight. When we get into online programs, seems to me, I guess, particularly important that you have really good oversight so that the candidates get the real deal. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Sure. So from what, and I will start it here, Ellen, but you can feel free to add more. What they have submitted and what we have asked is that their department chair will oversee the curriculum. So any changes to curriculum, any offering should be approved by the department chair. And they make sure that the curriculum is equivalent for the candidates regardless of the delivery. Another piece, again, is the clinical experience, and they will have to, they have in place contracts that they will put in place with the placements, with the schools. They will check for the quality of those placements, clinical, making sure the candidates get the skills at the level and the grade level and the subject area that they're getting endorsement for. And so they have all of that in place. And from our standpoint, those are my very concerns, and online learning is one of the areas that I do look at very carefully. And I would say I don't have any concern about that. And Ellen and Kathy, if you would like to add anything else that would add to what I said, please feel free to do that.
I think you summed it up well. Thank you, Marian.
So we are being asked to approve this program for 5 years or 7?
This is until the next review, which is 25-26. So
Okay,
about
so 3
years.
Okay.
And then when we go back to do the full review, we also look at this very carefully.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll move that we approve the Clark University Accelerated Online Elementary Education Program, including K-6 and K-8 endorsements until the next review scheduled for 25-26.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Call for a vote. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Next 9 programs that you see on the board agenda, this is kind of unprecedented that we would bring 9 programs to the board, but it's happening. I think it's historic. I do want to give a recognition to my colleague, Dr. Pega. She started 3 months ago, and she's overseeing the Paraeducator program approval. And of course, here we are with 9 program approvals that we have done in the last 2.5 months. So this was impossible without her, and she has shown very rigor and very quality work reviewing these programs. We accelerated these programs for approval, the approval process because of the TPRA, which you probably hear about it very often. One of the requirements of the grant for the candidates to be qualified for this fund to be able to go into the program and become teachers is for one of the pathways to have a paraeducation licensure. The department have taken several actions to address that, and one of them was to accelerate approving the programs. The other one is providing funding for those programs that don't offer that, so the candidates can complete that requirement without any cost out of pocket. And so this is just a very good service. In the long term, the benefit of these programs offering a paraeducator licensure is that most of these programs that we bring to you today have embedded the paraeducation certification coursework into the courses they already offer for educator preparation program. So a lot of that was already something that they were teaching with some adjustments in addition to what was already part of their foundation, human relation, or several courses that they offer. They will be able to continue to offer this if they want to the regular candidates beyond TPRA, which means we will be able to have candidates in teacher preparation programs who can serve as paraeducators while they become they're studying to become teachers. So I believe that in long term, this is going to be a very good service that these programs are offering to the state. Another recognition is to all the programs because they turned it around in a short time and they're just trying to make sure that they're making this happen so that they're serving that TPRA grant and to serve the future candidates also in different capacities. All of these programs that we brought to you are also approved. Their curriculum is also approved by the Board of Educational Examiners. So we appreciate that they worked with us in the short timeline to make this happen. We're going to take turns so that you're not just hearing my voice, but I will try to go over very quickly. I know your time is limit, so I will try to go quick, but please feel free to ask any question or if you would like me to elaborate on anything. The first program I'm bringing to you is BVU, Buena Vista University. Dr. Brittany Garling is representing the program. If she's here, I know she will be joining a different meeting at 1 o'clock, but I hope that she can join. We looked at the different standards, so I'm going to just go over one by one and talk a little bit briefly about some of the major topics that we had some more questions and we asked and they were able to answer. There was no concern moving forward. There were some recommendations that we provided to the program as we reviewed, and there were some communication that we did so that they know what this includes, what it means to provide this additional program. So in the organization and resources, it was clear that they have the appropriate support staff and learning management system to offering the work. They have advisors, library resources, clinical placement support, and coordinator. And they will record the minimum of 15 hours of field experience. These are some of the things that the unit have to make sure that they're in place and they manage it by the unit. So they are able to show that they have those resources available to them. They oversee the assessment and formative feedback throughout the process. They are engaging the advisory committee, which is also part of the governance, making sure that they're getting feedback from the community, including the principals, the people in the K-12 and in the program, from the previous students that they have had. And so they will be getting some feedback to improve, to continue to improve the program. In the diversity, there are two things that they're doing that are major. They're making sure the placements for students are happening in the diverse placements, including behavioral, elementary, high school, working with Iowa School for the Deaf, and various other diverse schools. So they're trying to make sure that candidates get some of those opportunities in addition to the coursework. All of the courseworks that they have to ensure that additional diversity requirements are included. And part of the strength of these programs, because they already offer the teacher prep program, they have those embedded into these courses in a much better quality that we see normally. Some other examples are the institutional policies that include some of the requirements that we would look at to make sure that they are equitable, they're providing equitable access and support for students and faculty. In the faculty section, they have qualified faculty member. In addition, they have approximately 1,500 funds available to faculty in each year that would be able to be utilized for their professional development. All the faculty are required in the educator preparation programs to complete 40 hours of in classroom K-12 experience in every 5 years. So that extent of work in the K-12 is exceeding the expectation for the paraeducation experience. Their assessment, again, this is going to be part of the unit. They are looking at the candidates meeting 70% or higher of the expectations in the classroom to pass any class. They're making sure that the field experiences are assessed and the students are getting feedback. And they also have a process for their program evaluation and assessment. The clinical, again, 15 hours is the minimal. A lot of their students are meeting more than that, but that's the minimum, which is still exceeding the requirement in Chapter 80, which is 10 hours of field experience. And they do evaluate and collect the student data, which we always look at when we go for the site visit. We look at to make sure that those are all collected and maintained by the program. The curriculum exhibit is approved by BOEE, and the evidence shows that they are in compliance with the Chapter 80 and Chapter 24, which is the BOEE curriculum standards. It is recommended that the state board approve the BVU approval for paraeducator program throughout the next review scheduled for 2026 and 2027. And if you have any questions, we're happy to answer.
So this is a first-time program. You
Yes.
haven't done this before, so.
Not the paraeducator.
So 5 years, we give them a 5-year certificate, then they have to do what to re-up that 5 years? What do they have to do?
They will have to do a complete application process again, and we will look at all of it again. And we, at that point though, this is where, that's a very good question, because they also do some collection of data that we didn't look at. At this point, they gave us their plan on how they're going to collect the data and use it for program improvement. When we go after 5 years, they have to show us how they have collected data and how they have used it to improve the student performance and the program.
So individual students, individual class takers, whatever we say.
Sure.
Yeah. So they have a 5-year, they're certified for 5 years, but after that 5-year period, you require another class. Is that right?
Okay, so for that one, so when the candidate is recommended for a certification, yes, BOEE does have some requirement for recertification, and those requirements can be met through some of the courses they can take through AEA or other courses that BOEE approve for that recertification or updating the certification.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? If not, I'll call for a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thanks, Dr. Garling.
Thank you.
And our next one up is Des Moines Area Community College. And we have Patsy Steffen, who's the Education Department Program Chair and Professor with us. And maybe Dominique too, Darlene, who is also a program consultant with DMAC. And they too have met their standards. To start, they have organizational and resource standards. DMAC does provide quite a bit of professional development opportunities for both their students and for faculty. They have summer institutes with faculty who participate in the professional collaboration and do different developmental activities. And then they also have an Explore Education Day for their high school students. In addition, they have lots of resources to support quality hands-on experiences. They have a course, EDU 218. It's a 2-credit course, but they do require 60 hours of field experiences, which is way beyond what the requirement is to get the certification. And they get placements both in secondary and in elementary school. And they also get to observe and assist the teacher in those 60 hours. They also have met the diversity standard, and that standard, they have lots of learning activities, assignments, and assessments where they look at cultural differences, diversity, equality, and inclusion. And they also have placements then in that 60 hours that I mentioned earlier in urban, rural, and metro area schools. And in addition, they have a very active diversity commission that includes faculty, staff, and students. And then in the faculty standard, they've met that as well. They have highly qualified faculty, and because all their instructors are required to have 18 graduate hours of education to teach. And they also all have K-12 experience that they can bring to the classroom. And faculty are involved in on-site visits, and they spend classroom time, their own personal classroom time with their students, reflecting on those clinical experiences that they've had. In the assessment and evaluation standard, the unit has a very well-established assessment system for the paraeducators. They require a portfolio. And in that portfolio, the students bring forth artifacts that are submitted, and then they're scored on a rubric with a rubric by the professors. And then DMAC is also planning to provide graduates or information, a survey that will go out to their graduates and also to the employers so they can get that continuous feedback to make sure that they have quality candidates and their knowledge, skills, and dispositions are up to date, and then also just for program improvement. And then lastly, their clinical practice standard is also met. That again is where they do the 60-hour requirement that I mentioned earlier. They have very clear connections made from the field to the coursework, and they have some wonderful partnerships across central Iowa school districts to provide all of those experiences. So with that, it's my recommendation that the state board approve the Des Moines Area Community College Paraeducator Preparation Program through the next review, which is 27-28. So if you have any questions about the process, I'm glad to answer those, and Patsy's available for the program.
I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the recommendation for approval forward. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
I'm the old man here, so you just have to understand. I get used to the idea now that when I go into a room, I'm the oldest person there. So I'm a little slower than the rest of these guys. Explain to me how we are coordinating college credit with paraprofessional certifications. I mean, it seems to me that we ought to be working to the max to use that time productively for college credit, if possible. Rather than just have a certification here, and maybe then I have to start over here and take college credits if I want that elementary degree.
Absolutely.
So how are we doing that?
Yeah, so for example, with DMAC, they do issue college credit. So all of the ones that are like through Iowa, the community college system or higher ed, that they are utilizing college credits. And then like some through the AEA, some issue college credit, but some then just issue for the certification. And I would say that depends a lot on the intent of the student. So For example, when Miriam talked about the grant, how we had people sign up to take those courses, we actually got a lot more paraeducators who wanted to do it. They didn't necessarily have interest in going further than that, but they wanted their certification. So the AEA was more appropriate for them, where if they wanted college credit and their intent was to be an educator someday, then they were able to do that. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely, and we should maximize that. To be, so we're not a lot of redundancy going on here, and we can encourage those people to continue on that pathway.
And actually, some of the AEAs have even said, we try to be very clear about what our program is, and if they are intending to transfer, that we would encourage them towards a community college or a private institution or.
One more question. So that generalist degree or certification, that generalist certification would be, I take 3 classes. Some of those folks require 3 classes, right? One would be on behavior, one would be on instruction, perhaps. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
So to get that generalist degree or certification, I shouldn't say degree. Is that right?
So we don't look at courses, but we have a minimum of 90 contact hours.
Okay.
However, the programs can decide if they want to meet it in 2 courses or 3 courses. And most of the programs add that one extra course because there is more methods and clinical requirement that they like to assess that. So they include additional requirement.
Good, thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thank you, Patsy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next program is Grandview University. This is again one of those educator preparation programs that have a 4-year teaching licensure degree. And what they are doing is they are utilizing 3 of their courses that would be pre-admission courses that students have to complete to be prepared to be admitted to teacher preparation. They are utilizing those courses to meet the requirements of the Paraeducator Certification. And their resources, again, they have the resources because these are part of their program. They are utilizing their courses from the program, so they are meeting the diversity beyond the expected requirements that the Paraeducator Certification needs. The candidates' coursework include learning to work with diverse students with variety of needs in diverse placements. They are doing the assessment of that. For this specific program, the minimum requirement is 10 hours, but normally the candidates end up doing at least 10 hours in the elementary and 10 hours in secondary, so they get both experiences. The faculty are highly qualified. They have the K-12 master's degree or higher. The assessment addresses all the required assessments that they have in the program, the candidate feedback that they provide to the candidate. They also have a portfolio requirement that the candidate collects the learning that they have throughout the program so that they have a nice portfolio by the time they graduate. And their clinical, again, it's meeting the requirements. They do have protocols to assess the candidates in the clinical placement, and they have both faculty and the cooperating teachers assess the candidate during those placements. Upon the review, it's clear that they have the evidence that they are meeting the Chapter 80 and Chapter 24 requirements. They are approved by curriculum is approved by BOEE, and it is recommended that the state board approve the Grandview Paraeducator Preparation Program throughout the next review scheduled for 2026 and 2027 academic year. I have Leah and who else do we have? Do we have Lindsay? So we have Leah that she will be able to answer questions from the program, and I'm happy to answer any other question about the Grandview.
Any questions?
I'd move that we approve Grandview's Paraeducator program through 26-27.
Second.
I think it's 27, 28.
Is it 27, 28? I don't want to be wrong about that.
27, 28.
27, 28. Thank you. Thanks for your correction.
So Corrected motion and second is 2728.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
The next program is another community college. They are utilizing the same system, so their courses are part of the already education program that they have for the candidates. They have the support and the staffing support. They have the department chair and 2 administrative assistants who support the program and the faculty throughout the program. The advisory board that they have meets twice a year, and it includes a diverse group of people who give them advice on how they can improve the program. Something that we recommended to them was to consider including current paraeducators and their supervisors in that advisory committee so that they can get some feedback on the program improvement specific to the paraeducation. With diversity, they have non-discrimination statements and policies, and they also in addition to that, they have placements and coursework that is focused on working with students with diverse backgrounds and needs. The candidates are prepared to work with students with diverse needs throughout their coursework and the field experience that they complete. The faculty are well qualified. All of their faculty have been there at least 8 years or longer. They're utilizing their full-time faculty for teaching these courses. And one thing about this program is they apply to be approved for both generalist and early childhood. So we did look at the qualification of faculty teaching the early childhood courses, and they do have that K-12 experience and related higher ed experience that would qualify them to teach those courses. The assessment, they're utilizing rubrics, so they're ensuring that if 2 different faculties teaching a course, they are they have an inter-rater reliability for assessing the courses, and there are valid assessment tools they're using. They also have a process for their program approval every 5 years. The clinical, the students will be placed on 1 credit course, allowing them to spend about 30 hours of time in the classroom. A lot of that experience is observation, but they are also assigned certain tasks that they will complete, so they will get some good experience. And they're all assessed by the unit faculty and the cooperating teacher. It is recommended that, the generalist, sorry about that. The generalist certification has 3 courses, and they add 2 additional courses if they want to earn also that concentration area in the early childhood. And that's how the paraeducation certification work, that they have to first earn that generalist certification, and then they can add those concentrations so that they can focus on certain areas. It is recommended that the state board approve the Hawkeye Community College Paraeducator Preparation Program, generalist and early childhood concentration area through the next review scheduled for the academic year. I think it is 26-27. I might have listed that in my notes wrong.
That's what it said.
So these paraeducators can be paid during their clinical.
Yes. The reason for that is there is a licensed teacher always in a classroom when somebody is serving as a paraeducator. And so because of that, the requirement of our chapter is that they have to be serving under supervision of a licensed teacher. So as long as a licensed teacher is in the classroom, those hours can be counted towards the clinical or student teaching.
Any other questions?
I move we approve the Hawkeye Community College Paraeducator Preparation Program for General Certificate and Early Childhood Area Concentrations through 26-27.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Cassandra. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Our next one is Iowa Valley Community College, and we should have Mary Ann Nickel, who's the academic dean at Iowa Valley. They too have met the standards, and Iowa Valley provides quite a few resources within their organizational and resource standards. They have great academic support both at ECC, which is at Ellsworth Community College, and Marshalltown Community College, and then also their satellite, which is part of the MCC campus. They have a writing center, they have tutoring, they also have services for people who are differently abled. They have 4 highly qualified faculty who advise the paraeducator candidates and follow them through the program. They have also met the diversity standard. They have field placements that are made in the school districts with opportunities to work with students from diverse backgrounds. Over the last year, faculty, students, and staff have all received professional development on diversity in the classroom and with working with various ability levels. And then they also have a Spanish language outreach, and they have an established Safe Zone program as well. For the faculty standard, which they've met, they have highly qualified faculty. All their instructors have K-12 experiences, and they provided their CVs, and on their CVs, they provided a wealth of experience that they have to share about their educational experiences. They have a quality evaluation system in place as well. All faculty and adjuncts are evaluated by the academic deans at all 3 campuses. And then they also have met the assessment and evaluation standard. Iowa Valley courses include assessment measures, including things like on papers, exams, presentations. They also do role play activities and small group activities. They have an advisory committee, and they have those across the districts, and those include administrators, supervising teachers, mentors, faculty, and current students, and also graduates. This helps kind of keep their program looking at ways to improve, and then also just up to date in the field. And then in their clinical standard, they have also met that, and the faculty actually work with the supervising teachers, and they guide them in their placements in their clinical experience, and they too use rubrics across the board so that they maintain it for all students equally in their observations to provide feedback for those students. So it is my recommendation that the state board approve the Iowa Valley Community College District Paraeducator Preparation Program through the next review scheduled for 26-27.
Any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved to approve accreditation. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved in second. Any further discussion? Now I'll call for the vote. All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The next program is from Mount Mercy University. We have Paula Ganzwan and Jennifer Rasmussen from the college who will be answering questions about that. They do have an approved educator preparation program, so teacher licensure program. They have utilized some of their courses again to offer the paraeducation generalist certification. Some of the evidence that they provided in the organization and resources were that they have the oversight for the field experience. They make sure that it's done directly by the full-time faculty, academic excellence center, library, and certified librarian support, career services support, counseling services are all available to their students who are taking these courses and in their other program. A full-time administrative assistant support is there to also support the faculty members in the program, but also including the paraeducation certification. In the diversity Their placements are tracked and recorded by the unit. They are making sure that they are relevant and to the future career of the candidates. And each candidate is placed in school designated as low socioeconomic status, urban and rural, so that they have all of those experiences. The faculty are qualified. They have master's or doctoral degree with a K-12 experience related to their teaching load. Their assessment is very aligned with their unit assessment. They have feedback for students and they have the program assessment plan in place. They will be completing those surveys of their recent graduates as soon as they have the first cohort graduate to get some feedback for program improvement. And then the clinical, the candidates will be completing minimum of 40 hours of field experience, which is well beyond the expectations of Chapter 80. And the cooperating teachers will confirm the total hours completed and they do an evaluation of the candidates. In addition to that, a licensed educator and their faculty member also assess the candidates through observation. The candidates also have observation opportunities as they are serving in the classroom. It is recommended that the state board approve Mount Mercy University Paraeducator Preparation Program throughout the next review schedule, I think for 2026, 2027. If it's 2027, 2028, we just move them to the next year just so we have fewer than 9 program that we bring to you.
Just a couple of curiosity questions. First of all, high school kids aren't eligible because they don't have a high school degree. Is that right? I mean, it seems to me, again, it would be really cool that those high school kids that are doing that in the classroom now be given that credit for clinicals and even paid for it.
So in the TPRA, it is scheduled so that they would gain credit towards it. What cannot happen, they cannot earn a paraeducation certification until they're 18 years old, but they can complete the program requirements.
Sure.
So they can earn the credit, they can earn the credit for the field experience, and that can be counted towards their experience, but they just can't get the certification.
Need to figure out
They
a
can
way.
still serve as an aid to the teacher, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you could pay them under another
And that's where,
entitled.
well, also that's kind of where the apprenticeship came in place for the TPRA, because those who are under 18 years old, between 16 and 18, they can be apprenticed in the school, which that's how they are getting paid, that they're serving as an apprenticeship as a paraeducator because it's under the supervision of a licensed teacher. So they're gaining this experience, serving as an apprentice, getting paid and earning credits. So
That's good.
Yes.
More incentive for those
it will
kids
be
to do.
great, yes, if we can extend that.
Why do we have all of these to do today? I'm not complaining, I'm just suggesting.
So
I mean, why did you dump this on my table? I mean,
very
I have
good
never
question.
seen this in 10 years of board member.
I agree with you.
Because I started 3 months ago.
Oh, okay. So you're moving these along, so this kind of dumped on your table.
Well, no, we didn't have these applications before Kelly moved.
I'm curious about why these, I mean, before today, we have 9 AEAs that are doing this. We have 5 schools of higher ed that are doing this, but now today, we have all of these. Is there something happening
Yes.
that I should know about? Yeah.
Yes, there is something happening. So the TPRA grant, notice of funding, had a verbiage that those entering one of the pathways that is para to teacher pathway, the second pathway, need to have a paraeducator certification.
Sure.
And not just being a paraeducator, because you can be a paraeducator without a certification, but that specific language required that. And that almost excluded 80% of the candidates who were planning to go into those programs. And so we had discussions with the districts, we had discussions with the programs, and there were some programs who were like, what do we need to do? And so we looked at our timeline and we showed them what they have and what they need to put in place. And they put an application together in a week or 2 because they had a lot of this structure in place because they were already offering these courses. So it was easy for them to do it. And that's why you see a lot of these programs are universities or community colleges because they have most of those resources they need in place. And that's why we found about that this summer, and the turnaround was last 2 months. So Kelly was helping them with the application process. They did the application. We reviewed the programs in a day or two. And then we got back to with some of them because we had some questions. There were just some applications that were not where we needed them to be. So we worked back and forth, but we were able to bring 9 of them to you today.
Thank you.
But thanks for
My
asking.
question is the flip side of Mike's though. Are there any educator programs that aren't adding this paragraph?
Yes.
And feel for why, I mean, it seems like.
why not?
Why not?
They are giving it a consideration.
Okay.
There are some also who are looking at ways to collaborate with AEAs who are already offering it so that they're not double working what is already happening, kind of what the very good question you asked the other time. So if these are offered by other programs, how can they outsource it but still provide the credit? So there are different ways they are looking at it. There are some programs who are certainly looking at offering it in the fall and spring of next year. But these were the ones who
So
were.
we could have
who
nine,
had
we could
the-
have 9
who
more.
had it
next time.
available.
I have a
Yeah,
question for
may be
you,
asking for it.
Director Lebo, is, and I'm not complaining because I sort of like hearing this, but is there any requirement that this couldn't be under the consent agenda? I mean, there isn't a single one of these where a standard not met.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Probably could.
don't take it like I don't want to hear this. I do, but it seems like, yeah, like pull it out if you have a question rather than, I don't know.
Expecting all this when we first prepared the agenda, and they weren't all on there actually when we first prepared the agenda, so we kind of added them late. But absolutely, if we see this going forward, we could present them differently.
We had 3.
I didn't know if this had to be the process.
No, we
It's kind
had
of just the timing of when they all rolled in, but we wanted to make sure we got them to you so that they could be approved.
Right, and I'm not objecting in any way to what we're doing.
We will adjust, absolutely.
So your recommendation?
I recommend for Mount Mercy University for full approval for their generalist certification through the 2026-2027 academic year.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, Northwest Iowa Community College is up next, and we have Leah Murphy, who's joining us, and she's the Dean of Arts and Sciences and Business and Health at Northwest Iowa Community College. So I'll start with the organizational and resource standards again that are met. All faculty are required to attend annual orientation training meetings and to work with the college dean and the other program faculty to ensure course quality. Northwest Iowa also provides professional development opportunities for faculty, and they even have a spring conference where all faculty attend. On their diversity standard that's met, Northwest Iowa Community Colleges, they have experienced a big shift in their minority population, and the school districts served by NCC all have non-discrimination statements and are working to hire a diverse paraeducator population. They have plans to utilize some data as their program progresses to look at enrollment and completion, retention and assessment, to analyze and get the feedback back to improve their program. In the faculty standard, Northwest Iowa Community College requires all full and part-time staff to be reviewed annually by the dean to ensure the quality and make sure that they're meeting the qualifications that they require at the community college. And then the assessment and the evaluation standard, that was also met. The paraeducator program outcomes align with the state certification standards. They have established performance measures through rubrics for the paraeducator candidates, and the outcomes are reviewed regularly for program evaluation. And then in clinical 2, they also have met that. And they have clinical experience where they utilize daily reflection journals as well as classroom observation by their qualified instructors. Their plan is to collect annual evaluation data to provide feedback to the candidates as well. So it is my recommendation that the state board approve Northwest Iowa Community College Paraeducator Preparation Program through the next review schedule of 27-28.
Approval has been moved
Second.
and second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thanks, Leah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
The next program is University of Dubuque, and I have Dr. Chad Biermeyer here from the university. I'm going to reduce the repetition of some of the things that we have said, and I just want to focus on some of the things that were way more specific to the program. So something that they had mentioned in the organization and resources that this is something that all the programs do. They make sure that the resources they have are equitable for the candidates regardless of the delivery. And they had very good evidence of that being available to them. In the diversity, they not only focus on candidate recruitment of the candidates, diverse candidates, but also recruitment of faculty and staff who are diverse. In the faculty, all the faculty members are meeting the 40 hours of continuous teacher prowess and activities in K-12. And the unit is ensuring that the faculty evaluation and professional development is aligned with their teaching activities. In the assessment, University of Dubuque has one of the best assessment systems I have seen and read in the reports. They have very good use of valid and reliable assessments. And they also use the candidates' performance data and survey data and other data that they collect in the process of updating the program very regularly. Their clinical include 40 hours of field experience, which is assigned and assessed and monitored based on the candidate's interest and the program that they're planning to get certified for. Based on our review, they have met the requirements of Chapter 80 and 24, and it is recommended that the state board approve the University of Dubuque preparation program for the generally certification in the next review scheduled for 2026-2027 academic year.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved in second for the University of Dubuque program. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried.
Okay, last but not least, Upper Iowa University, and we have Jody Grover here, and we also have Alex Hansen here. Jody is the lead teacher coordinator, and Alex is assistant professor of education. And I believe we have Dr. Billy Cowley on Zoom, and she's the dean of education. So they too have met the standards. We'll start with organizational and resource standards. The unit faculty participate in professional development days, faculty development, and serve on advisory boards. The Upper Iowa also has quality hands-on clinical experiences with a 20-hour practicum in their first course. And then for the diversity standard, Upper Iowa provides opportunities for candidates to acknowledge backgrounds and experiences of others and responds in a culturally responsive and developmentally appropriate way. They also work with their students. The coursework includes addressing how schooling influences and is influenced by equity issues. And then the faculty standard, Upper Iowa documents the alignment of teaching duties and ensures paraeducators have access to highly skilled professors and cooperating teachers. And the faculty are the schools, the facilitating Upper Iowa students' experiences. And they do that by doing things like reading budding projects, math lessons, helping with assessment, and observing student clinicals. And then finally, in assessment and evaluation, Upper Iowa, they have very trained faculty that look at the assessment, and they have very rigorous and valid assessments. They have one open program delivered at 4 different locations as a blended format, and all course requirements are the same regardless of the delivery and are assessed the same. And then in the clinical, the candidates complete the 20 hours that we already talked about under the supervision of a licensed teacher, and the candidates are observed working with small groups and individual students. And so with that, it is my recommendation that the state board approve Upper Iowa University Preparation Program for the next review scheduled in 27-28.
With us all day, would you like to meet?
Do you require that clinical that candidates work with minority students? Is that part of the clinical?
We
Required so many hours?
we encourage that at our the
Don't
different.
require it though.
It depends on the setting. Sometimes there's different diversity requirements or to give in our area, like our Fayette campus versus our Des Moines campus. So we try to do urban, rural, and suburban placements for our students and to have a variety of experiences in schools that are low socioeconomics and different various schools. We try for a diversity of placements with each placement required.
Thank you.
And in their teacher prep program, they would get 25 hours of diverse experience. So it could be possible that they get that in the first 20 hours, but it's within their teacher prep program.
Move to approve.
Been moved to approve Upper Iowa. And second, any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor of approval indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's carried. Congratulations.
Good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Let's see, we've done lunch, board reports, we've done legislative updates, we've done student outcomes. Now we're up to conditions for learning.
And we're back.
We're ahead.
We're ahead.
Yeah, about 2 or 3 minutes. What did we do to the charter school? What's that?
Good afternoon,
We
ladies.
approved those rules, and then there's
They worked it out.
side, yeah.
You should be satisfied with that.
Yeah, it's sort of physical.
I stepped out to go to the restroom.
Oh. There's, somebody has to send you the link. Send them the link.
I'll have to send them the link.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you want to be a panelist to put anything.
Looks like you're already sharing.
Good? We're good? Okay. Good afternoon. Thanks for letting us talk about the Conditions for Learning survey. My name is Barb Anderson, and I'm the Administrative Consultant for Social Emotional Behavioral Health. And I will let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Courtney Clement. I am an Education Program Consultant in the newly made Student and Family Special Education Services Bureau. And joining us today, we also have Jason Crowley, who handles the data analysis of Conditions for Learning, and its implementation in the Accountability Index. And we have Barbara Oland, who is an admin consultant and who has been the driving force behind the Conditions for Learning survey since the department created it.
I can continue. So the Conditions for Learning is part of our federal education law, the Every Student Succeeds Act. And it is a part of all public schools administer the Conditions for Learning survey. It's a data source to improve the safety, student engagement, and the overall learning environment so that all students have the optimal conditions for learning. Two of the companion surveys that are available for districts are a parent survey and a school staff survey. And those questions are similar to the student survey, so that there we have allow for 3 different data points that schools have the option of being able to examine. So as I said, oops, sorry, on this one, pardon me. As I mentioned earlier, the Conditions for Learning survey is given a weight as part of the Iowa School Performance Profile. This slide shows you that weight. So for the upcoming 22 release of the performance profiles, the Conditions for Learning survey is weighted at 18% of the school's score for elementary and middle schools and 8% for high schools. So data from the survey provides several uses. It provides building level data, which shows the areas for schools to focus on. It identifies their strengths as well as their areas for improvement. At the building level, school staff can look at subgroup data so they can really focus on what are the areas in which to improve and who are the students that are feeling most engaged and who we need to reach out to make sure that they feel a part and a sense of belonging. The survey was developed to be an annual administration, and it's intended to be viewed at a construct level, not specifically just item by item, but the constructs. And that means that the data is meant to be interpreted for the overall health of a school community in those construct areas and for different subgroups. So this may look familiar, the multi-tiered system of support triangle. It is Iowa's everyday decision-making framework. It aligns both the academic and social, emotional, behavioral health into one integrated continuum of services. So in a healthy system, we know that 80% of all students will have their needs met at that universal level, but about 10 to 15% of students are going to require some additional supports in order to be successful. And then 1 to 5% of those students may need some more intensive supports. The Conditions for Learning really lives at the universal level for all students. So what we know is that students who feel welcome and safe and welcome in school environments, that's essential for learning and helps them to succeed academically. It's also promoted, welcomes, it promotes wellness and cultivates resiliency. So these are the survey constructs or topical areas. They are the same in each student survey and parents and staff surveys. So it focuses on physical safety. The physical safety questions ask about the student safety on the school grounds and the school property, emotional safety, the adult-student relationship, student-to-student relationships, and boundaries and expectations. We wanted to share some examples of what some of the items are by construct. Those examples are shown here are from 3 to 5 and 6 to 12. And they show how the changes are made and the meaning and intent of the question are more easily understood for younger grades. But the intention and the sense of that question is the same, both for physical safety, emotional safety, adult-student relationships, and boundaries and expectations. So I am going to turn it over now to Courtney, who's going to speak about the school performance profiles.
Okay. So as we mentioned before, the data is released every fall on the Iowa School Performance Profiles. The construct scores are the percent of students that answered each item in that construct with a positive response. So our denominator are students that answered all questions in that construct, and the numerator are just the students that gave a positive response to each question coded as that construct. A higher score is indicative of a more positive perception of school environment, particularly in that area. And we also have scores for several student subgroups, like Barb mentioned, such as learners with disabilities or students with APs, English learners, as well as race and ethnicity. Then there's also an overall composite score, which is a weighted average of those construct scores. So we take the sum of the numerators divided by the sum of the denominators to get that weighted average. And that's the score that is given the weight that Barb mentioned to be added to the overall school score on the performance profile. We do have more details around that scoring. If you're interested in the Iowa School Performance Profiles Technical Assistance Guide, conditions for learning would be included in that. So here's an example of what a page would look like on the Iowa School Performance Profile. You can see that composite is that top line, 47.46, with the bars underneath representing each of the other construct scores. And again, another example of how that would look to see by student subgroup. So English learners. Here, lowest socioeconomic status are students that are eligible for free and reduced lunch. And for reporting, we use students with disabilities or those that are on IEPs. So before we get to some data from the last few years, I just wanted to detail a few changes that we like to keep in mind when we're comparing year-to-year data, because it does make a difference as we interpret and move forward with schools to use it. So the 2017-18 school year was the first year of the survey, which surveyed grades 5 to 12, and they all took the same level of questions and responses. We then, for the following year, developed a separate survey for students in grades 3 to 5, that was adjusted, like we said, to be a little bit more age appropriate in both the items and the ways that they could respond to the questions. 2019-2020, the survey was not administered due to COVID-19, the same year that we didn't do student assessments as well. Then the following year, as students returned to school, we did have quite a bit of fluctuation from beginning of the school year to the end. Students might have started in remote, then moved to hybrid or in person. So those data were not included in that year's accountability performance profiles. And now for this most recent year, in 21-22, all student responses, or all student grades, I should say, from 3 to 12 will be included in accountability for the first year. So here are the results from students in grades 3 to 5, beginning from the 18-19 school year, with the orange bars being the most recent 2022 data. You can see that student-student relationship has a percentage of 85.7, which means that nearly 86% of students responded positively to every question in that area. Conversely, the lowest score, as you can clearly see, is emotional safety with 19.4%. And then these are the results from students in grades 6 to 12. This one has the highest score in physical safety with 48.6% responding positively to every question. And you can see that similarly, emotional safety was the lowest score for this year as well. I also want to point out that there's an additional bar on this chart from the 2017-18 year, which is that first tealish color. And that's because while students in grades 5 also took that, the survey instrument was essentially the same as what the now 6 to 12 survey is. So we thought it made more sense to display it with this one. So what questions are there?
So what do you make of those numbers? In a vacuum out, absent of context, that's, especially with the emotional safety, that's concerning to me. It seems alarming.
Yes.
Do you agree? Is there, am I missing?
Yep. So emotional safety would absolutely be, as you can see clearly by the data, a high priority need. And I would say that is true for a lot of schools across the state. We typically find that emotional safety is one of the areas of greatest improvement.
So how do we change it?
You want to talk about the guide?
Yeah, so, yes, I do. Thank you. Barbara Olin had kind of led a team of us to, we have guidance for the conditions for learning, but we had focused specifically in response to some of that data on bullying and harassment, which plays, that intersection is really important. We piloted that and got some, or not piloted it, but we had a stakeholder group and had districts and AEA staff provide us feedback on that. So that is will be a resource for schools moving forward. We're finalizing it, and it should be available. We hope soon, but certainly by the spring.
How will schools use that resource again?
So the data from the Conditions for Learning survey really helps them drill down and look at, what are our students saying? What's been their experience in school? We know that emotional safety is really low. And a lot of the items within that construct really focus on issues of bullying and harassment. So the toolkit, the data toolkit for bullying and harassment really helps them look at what does your data say? And then we have some resources linked in that to look at what are the evidence-based practices to address bullying. And then how do you continue to monitor that? So we hope that will be a valuable resource for schools. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, I can try and be more clear.
and to add on, sorry, go ahead. To add on top of that, also, some of that investment in that University of Iowa Mental Health Center is intended to, one, extend those services, and two, find people and train people to do this. And so that's, because we're always looking, more resources, but who's going to implement it. So it's a combination of kind of both.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. And so there have been a lot of grant opportunities looking at conditions for learning, looking at ways that they could provide additional social, emotional, behavioral health, and aligning that with the data that's really going to inform what they identify.
Can you go back to the pyramid that you showed?
Sure. Yeah.
So this would be in a typical, you're showing me 80% of the kids would be relatively well off, right?
In a healthy system.
In a healthy system, okay?
Absolutely.
But in the system we have, it appears to me that it's overwhelmed. It's almost impossible to deal with all the needs that are there. Is that a fair statement?
I think that's a fair statement.
I mean, we're overwhelmed. It is almost more than is possibly to be imagined or managed.
Yes, I would agree.
So MTSS doesn't necessarily work.
Well,
on the learning side.
It isn't, certainly is. It's not ideal right now in terms of what that looks like. I would say that data, so in terms of what you identify for intensifying services, kind of shifts down. So, to your point, which I think is a really important one. What are the services that all students need, which is much more intense than it was before COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
That was an issue before COVID. I think COVID just kind of exasperated it.
Absolutely.
So I understand the toolkit, and maybe I'll be a little bit more drilled down, is that, and I mentioned the resource at the University of Iowa. But a lot of this, not a lot, but a significant part still gets down to what professionals are available to help kids in classrooms. Teachers aren't prepared to deal with all this. They're trying to help kids learn, and they are struggling with kids who are not emotionally stable, for a better terminology. So the toolkits are nice, investment is nice, but it's gonna take a lot more than just the people in education helping out here. We need a more comprehensive approach. I remember asking our county representative, this has been a decade or more ago, I said, so we have mental health services for adults. Do we have mental health services for kids in the county? No, they're not covered. It's got to be a real broad approach. And so we're going to have to look for partners with us to help address some of these situations.
The one thing I say when I go out and speak continuously is that when schools shut down, it took all of us to come together and meet the needs that schools were, to fill the needs that schools were meeting before. Just because schools opened back up doesn't mean we should all step away, because we need all of us to continue to provide those supports, because it cannot just be the teachers in the classroom. It can't just be a resource. It has to be the partners that we know are available in our communities to continue to work together. So 100%, that's what we continue to sort of advocate for. And now we know we can do it. We've seen we can do it. We've seen that we need it. And we also need to take care of the adults. Like, everybody needs to understand the resources that are available to them as well.
Are you able to analyze this data from a standpoint of the districts where schools or students are feeling especially vulnerable from a safety standpoint? Like, could you pull the top 25 districts where students rated school safety as an issue? And so could we overlay that and send those schools a special invite to, here's the data from our survey. You might want to take a really close look at the School Safety Improvement Fund application and put those two things together?
Oh, the thing I talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Potentially, I see what you're saying. Potentially. I mean, they should all be doing that anyway. But to your point, if we go back to look where we ended up with Davenport, it was this type of trigger that got us into the system, understand the needs were being met. So it does allow us to intervene earlier, but all schools will have those resources. I guess I see what you're saying. Like, do we, not so much the resources, but the services on the other side that we have conversations with them about, hey, this is what's available. How can we come in and help?
Do we look at big, small, urban, rural? Do we have that kind of refinement?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do all these calculations down to all the way down to the school and student group level, like Courtney was saying. So we could look at the certified enrollment the district size categories and break these results out by district characteristics like enrollment size. Yeah.
You mentioned the two terms of bullying and harassment. So since you brought it up, it's like the court, right? You provided me some foundation here. So we have for years asked schools to submit examples or cases, that's a better term, of bullying and harassment in the school. Okay. So what have we done with that data? And have we kept after schools to give us that information so we know what's going on?
A great question. One of the things, and I know that it, this gentleman's, sorry, I don't know. To your important point, that the data toolkit around bullying and harassment doesn't answer all of the questions, but it really is an important piece of it because it's data. So one of the part of those steps within that would be looking at data that's inconsistent, and what does that mean for the district? So if you have students in their conditions for learning that are reporting that they don't feel safe and that their things are being stolen and they don't have a sense of belonging, and yet the district has maybe 3 reported founded cases. So if as part of a team, a building team, how do you make sense of that? And what's the action plan so that those numbers and their data can inform their implementation? Does that help?
It'd be my contention. I have an idea about that. But I think it's my contention that if it's good information, then we ought to do it.
Absolutely.
It's not something we ought to give to teachers. Just say, here's another thing to fill out this form that you have every time you see harassment and bullying going on. But if it's valuable data, then we ought to do it. And we're not doing it. We're not doing this around the state of Iowa. We're not send it in the Department of Ed in mass numbers so that we actually get a clear picture of what's going on at school. That information would be valuable, it seems to me. And as a teacher, I would be glad to submit that information when I see that happening. But it is something else that's for a teacher to do. And, but if it's valuable, we ought to be doing it. And we ought to be insisting that that information come in. If it's not, let's figure out a better way to address some of those issues.
Jay?
So I just wanted to mention Jay Pennington from Department of Ed. The conditions for learning data, not the latest info that Marvin and Courtney are presenting today, is on the Performance Profiles website, publicly available. And there's a comparison chart that you can look at from high to low, every district in the score. So it's available for you right now. I've got it on my computer, and anyone can look at it. So at any rate, it's there.
So you've kind of graded them, Jay.
Well, we don't put a grade. It's just the raw score, and every school is a bubble on this chart for schools to look at, for the public to look at. Certainly the resources that are available that Courtney and Barbara mentioned are critical, but I just thought I'd mention that anyone can look at it.
Thomas, did you have something?
Just one brief comment to put a frame around the student-specific bullying and harassment reports and investigations that deal with a specific child, a specific assailant, a specific teacher versus these data as a whole, which capture the bottom of the iceberg. Complaints that are actually filed are just the top of the iceberg. Let's look at the health as a whole, that subsurface look, that systemic look. So the two reporting purposes, this and the student-specific instances have different purposes. You can triangulate with these data, but they serve initially very different purposes. Health of the building as a whole versus is this particular child's rights being protected? And taking them together give you a better picture, but the data have two different purposes.
Sure.
I'm aware that we are out of our allotted time. Are there any other questions?
Hearing none, let's take a break. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I mean, think of what you do. I can see my kids. Yeah, I'll tell you that. If we as educators